How did Jesus heal the blind man in Bethsaida? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Mark on Walking Through the Bible.
Of his word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Mark chapter 8. We're going to be reading from verses 22 to 26. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Mark chapter 8, beginning at verse 22. Then he came to Bethsaida, and they brought a blind man to him and begged him to touch him. So he took the blind man by hand and let him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands on him, he asked him if he saw anything. And he looked up and said, I see men like trees walking. Then he put his hands on his eyes again and made him look up. And he was restored and saw everything clearly. Then he sent him away to his house, saying, Neither go into the town nor tell anyone in the town. It is rare in our study of Mark that we find a story that is exclusive to Mark alone. For many of his stories would be covered in Matthew, and if they weren't covered there, much of what remained would be covered by Luke. But in today's reading, we have a story covered exclusively by Mark. Jesus and his disciples have crossed the Sea of Galilee and come to Bethsaida. There have been plenty of discussions as to where Bethsaida is as it relates to the Sea of Galilee. It was only mentioned once in Matthew, and this is only the second time we have it mentioned in Mark, with the only other reference being in Mark 6, verse 45. It appears from archaeology that Bethsaida was situated on the northeast corner of the Sea of Galilee. On most maps, it would be placed on the east side of the Jordan River, which would make sense, for in Luke's account of the feeding of the 5,000, an event we know took place on the east side of the Jordan River, Luke is going to say that they went into a deserted place which belonged to Bethsaida. So from where Jesus and the disciples were, crossing the Sea of Galilee didn't necessarily mean that they went direct west to direct east. In this case, they traveled northeast. The people of that region knew who Jesus was, for he had been there multiple times, and when they saw him, they brought to him a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. Jesus could have said no, but he didn't. He simply took the blind man out of the city, anointed the man's eyes with spit, and put his hands on the man. He then asked the man if he saw anything. The man said that he saw men, like trees, walking. What did this mean? It meant the man couldn't see clearly, but he could see something, even if it was unclear. Now you might ask, how would this blind man know what either a man or a tree looked like if he was blind? This statement shows a lack of understanding about the perception of those who are blind. Just because you can't see with your eyes doesn't mean a person cannot know what things look like. Sure, they cannot tell color and might miss some fine detail, but the blind can tell the shapes of things, especially large objects like men and trees. So that the man was making these types of descriptions shouldn't surprise us. If Jesus had stopped the miracle here, though, then the man would have been able to partially see, which is certainly better than being totally blind, but he wouldn't be healed. Jesus didn't stop here, though. Jesus put his hand on the man again and made him look up again, and this time the man saw everything clearly. This was a two-stage miracle, something we don't see Jesus doing in the past. Why did Jesus perform the miracle this way? Mark doesn't tell us. But like the miracle we saw at the end of chapter 7, Jesus can perform his miracles in many different ways. In this case, Jesus chose to show the man how much power he had in that he not only could heal him partially, he could heal him completely. Faith healers of today, people who are frauds and have no power at all, do not attempt to perform miracles this way. Jesus, the Son of God from heaven, the creator of this universe, who had power over everything, could bend the forces of nature to his will. This again ties into Mark's overall theme, which is to show that Jesus is God himself. By showing us different methods that Jesus used to perform these miracles, it should become evident who Jesus was and should cause the reader to believe and obey. This miracle was done in private outside the city, again giving Jesus the chance to avoid the large crowds who wanted to see miracles happen. And since it was done in private, Jesus asked the man not to return to the town nor tell anyone in the town. Now, I'm sure Jesus wasn't telling the man to move out of Bethsaida permanently, nor to hide the fact that he was healed permanently, but simply to delay his return to the city until Jesus could move on. And it appears that unlike other times, this man did as Jesus requested. For in our next episode, we're going to find Jesus in the city of Caesarea Philippi, a city about 50 kilometers to the north of Bethsaida. With that, our time is up for today. We hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Mark chapter 8, verses 27 to 30, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.